everybody. Welcome back to the GRADEx Show on Earth. That right there, the man, the myth, the legend, the CEO, Fab Del Rio of GRADEx. What's happening, buddy? It's summertime in your neck of the woods. It's warm out there.
Finally, we've been waiting for it, haven't we? It's nice. It's warming up here. All the sports are going. Let's get going.
Yeah, it's funny because we've been enjoying warm weather for about a month now, and then finally getting to the weekend on this end, and then all of a sudden, like, the temperature kind of dips, and so everybody's like, "Come on!" I mean, we can use some rain out here, and nobody's tuning in to listen to me talk about the weather, but it's like one of those, like, okay, here on the West Coast, at times, I still long for a good, sweaty, hot, stanky, sort of other side of the Rockies kind of heat. So, that's the market, though. That is the market that we're in right now from the collectibles world. But lots to get to. I mean, look, quick reminder, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. We really are, we're very humbled by the fact that you take the time to watch, listen, and engage with our content. So thank you so much from all of us here at the GRADEx Media team. A quick reminder, make sure you're liking and subscribing to our YouTube page. And if you are a total info junkie, you just feed me more. Make sure that you have signed up for our twice monthly newsletter. All you got to do is go to gradexmedia.com. It's free to sign up. And those newsletters get delivered fresh into your inbox twice a month. As the kids might say, easy peasy, lemon squeezy. So between the podcast here, Fab, drops every 2 weeks, along with the newsletter every 2 weeks, like, we're cooking here with GRADEx Media.
We're cooking, yeah. We try to cover everything. There's always new stuff, especially this newsletter coming up. There's a lot of reports on some big sales, big items that are just coming up for sale, big news. I mean, there's just so much to cover. Like we've said before, this could be a 2-hour podcast very easily, but we'll leave some of that to the written form and let people do some digging. But I think it's a good balance.
Well, listen, there's a lot to get into. World Cup's ready to go. Canadian Football League's kicking off, and hey, we're on the Canadian side of the border, so we're gonna chop it up a little CFL. I'm gonna play a little show and tell coming up here in a little bit, and let's see. This is the CFL can be a little niche, but this guy has got awesome. Some cards from the Canadian Football League. But the GRADEx Media team had quite the adventure recently in Toronto at a Blue Jays game. You got the VIP treatment where you and Dennis May made a trade with a member of the Toronto Blue Jays. Explain here, Fabulous. The floor is yours, sir.
Oh, it's awesome. Yeah, so our good man Dennis May, Mayday as we like to call him, he has a shop.
By the way, eBay. Is everybody from Buffalo Mayday?
Pretty much, right?
Right, everybody's stealing Brad May's nickname here, right? Mayday, Mayday. If you're from Buffalo, Mayday, yeah.
The catcher for the Jays, Tyler Heineman, reached out to Dennis through eBay. And Dennis has an eBay store, King of Buffalo. He's had it for about 20 years. And he reached out because Tyler Heineman is a UCLA alum. And he's just gotten into collecting, and he's getting into UCLA players. And of course, friend of the show, Rock Cybulski, that's a card that Dennis had up for sale. So Tyler reached out and said, hey, I see you're Cybulski. I'm a UCLA alum. Can we work something out? And so long story short, it worked out that Tyler was able to hook us up with batting practice tickets, tickets to the game, a few items from the Jays, a baseball. And the cool part is they let us document it. So Dennis and I jumped on the good old GO train. He drove up from Buffalo. I met him at the GO train station in Burlington, headed right into the Dome. So we documented most of it, and it was pretty cool. And it was especially cool because it was definitely Canada night at the ballpark with the Jays playing the Florida Marlins, or I guess they're Miami Marlins now. And so you had Owen Casey from Burlington. You had what's his first name? Hicks. Liam Hicks, who, by the way, almost went to Brock, by the way. It's a fact.
No kidding.
Back in the day, he had told our head coach, yeah, I'm coming. And then right before essentially commitment day, he got an offer to a small school in the U.S. and the rest is history. So, there was lots of Canadian talent there. It was a beautiful day, and like I said, we have a YouTube video up that kind of about 8 to 10 minutes long about what the day was all about, and it was pretty neat. We got to see Tyler interact with a lot of other fans. There was a young 16-year-old catcher next to me asking questions about, hey, Tyler, what was your pop time when you were in high school? And when he catches the ball to get it to second base. And it was just cool to listen to him interact and talk casually about, how he got to UCLA and all kinds of stuff. So yeah, we have that up on our YouTube channel, and it was just a super fun experience. The ball game itself was a little rough. The Jays did not have their best day, but yeah, made for a fun event and little peek behind the curtain of what it's like at the ballpark.
A nice way to make a deal with a rock star for the Toronto Blue Jays and King of Buffalo, making magic happen. So again, check that out on the GRADEx Media YouTube page, the full backstage. The cameras are rolling. You get the whole interaction and taking it right down on the diamond, right at field level. Pretty cool. I had a chance to watch that, and
it was pretty fun.
That was fun. I got to say, a little jealous not being down there for that, man. It's like, hey, how come all the Eastern guys have all the fun these days?
I know. It was totally a last-minute thing. So we were supposed to go, I think, against Pittsburgh on the Saturday, and that would have been Paul Skeens pitching, but something got crossed up, and then Tyler kind of said, hey, well, how about Monday? And so we kind of jumped on. But yeah, fun day. Yeah, really cool to see these guys up close and the way they train and prepare and all that stuff. And yeah, I'll save some of the stuff for the video. I won't give away too much, but it was pretty fun.
All right, awesome. You can check that out again on the YouTube page on GRADEx Media. Lots of fun there, and shout out to Tyler Heineman for being a good sport and playing along as well. Okay, lots of news happening. This is such a fun time as a sports fan. You've got the NBA Finals are happening. You've got the Stanley Cup happening right now. Baseball kind of almost nearing the midway point, and then the World Cup's coming up. We're going to touch on that in a moment. CFL's kicking off as well. We're a little over a month away from NFL training camps opening. Like, what a time to be a sports fan right now, right? And let's talk about the NBA Finals right now. We obviously know that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he's already a champion. He is a two-time NBA MVP. And boy, he just hit a new milestone this week in the collectibles world with a massive number here, Fab.
Yeah, this was an incredible sale. So this was done through Golden Auctions.
Okay.
And it's a card we talked about a little while back. So Topps and Fanatics recently got the NBA license before the start of the season. And part of what they wanted to include in one of their first products, and this one is Topps Chrome, is a similar idea to the Major League Baseball debut patches. Okay. But what they did was for the MVP, the Defensive Player of the Year, and Rookie of the Year, they removed, first of all, the player had a golden logo man on their jerseys all season long to represent those awards. And so Topps designed cards of different rarities, where some of them were numbered out of 4, where it would have been just the logo patch, some autographed, again with the patch, 1 of 1. So I think they had 3 or 4 different versions of each player. So the card we're talking about is SGA's gold logo man autograph 1 of 1. So as the MVP of last season, he's wearing that gold logo man logo on his jersey, and they built the card around that. And it actually wasn't the card itself that sold. It's actually the redemption card. So the card physically doesn't exist yet, but the redemption card is what was sold. And it went for just over $1 million. I think it was $1.06 million. Crazy. Which is awesome, which is a high for any SGA card. And so cool. Such a nice looking card. Really well presented, and I'm sure they'll do their best to keep it in as mint condition as possible before it gets to the buyer. But yeah, huge. And a couple weeks, about 2 or 3 weeks earlier, the similar card in Topps Chrome NFL came up with Josh Allen. So again, it's the same 1/1 NFL Shield autograph of Allen's that sold for $1.35 million. And I believe that was through Fanatics Collect. I think that was an auction result. So yeah, incredible, right? These brand new cards, like literally not even made yet, that are selling for over $1 million. And yeah, it goes to show, like, the design and style and overall look of a card can really do special things. And of course, you attach the Topps Chrome brand on both of those, and that makes them really, really meaningful.
Wild. That's crazy. And so there's SGA pushing 7 figures, Canadian kid hitting pay dirt, right? So it's not just Gretzky cards as a Canadian athlete that are hitting for over $1 million. SGA is now into that. And at the same time, I don't know. I think it's fair to say that SGA does not have the aura and the mystique that Victor Wembanyama has in terms of how he is kind of being presented as the future face or even the now of the NBA, right? And his coming out party, really these playoffs, I think a lot of people really seeing him on the biggest platform, what he did in the conference final, and here he is now in the NBA finals, and off to a bit of a shaky start, but nevertheless, he's there, right? He's there as a youngster in the finals. What's the market looking for Wemby right now? Because people, it's not a secret anymore. And it's funny because people were talking like, wow, this guy is something else. Basketball purists have seen this happening for years now, but the mainstream audience is starting to see how an athletic 7'4" gazelle. I mean, people call him an alien, but he can shoot like Steph Curry from long range. He can he's inside like Kareem. It's just wild.
It's wild, and you're right. I think that Game 7 of the conference final was to determine who is the big dog moving forward, and what a game it was. And the market for Wembanyama stuff has gone nuts. I believe it was, I don't know if it was right before or right after the game. So there was a PSA 10 1/1 Prism black card. So not an autograph, a 1/1 black Prism of Wembanyama, his rookie year, that was sold. I believe it was a private sale, again through Fanatics Collect, of $5.1 million. Like, you're talking like top 14 card of all time. And, we talked about it offline on text, like, that's risky. Like, this is his, third year in the league, and he's tremendous and has an incredible skill set, and we've never seen anything like him.
But yeah, everybody wants. But at the same time, I think purists look and go, "Oh my God, is that a broken ankle waiting to happen or something?" Right? Just the length and just the way and the athleticism of a human who has pushed limits for. You just don't see big men move quite like that
at all, right? And think about what $5.1 million gets you, and. Anyway, high risk, hopefully a high reward for the buyer down the road. Hopefully we get to see a healthy Wembanyama for the next 15 years. But remarkable, just an example of how crazy the market is going. And a lot of his popular inserts, of course, his rookies are going nuts, but his Panini Kabooms are going crazy. His first Topps Chrome cards, it's just all over the place. And now, of course, with the Knicks taking the lead in the series, now people are starting to shy a little bit. You're starting to see a little bit of that volatility with his pricing. But but things are going
But
bananas.
I
Like
mean,
it's
but
just,
he's there.
yeah, there's just
He's,
so
but
many
I mean,
transactions.
But, you know, and as much as people want to be, oh, I don't know, like if you're going to ride the market, like if you're going to be up and down game to game, I mean, that is a sucker's game, you know, if you're prospecting
Yeah.
like that. But look, Wemby's in the finals in his third year. You know, Jordan broke into the league in what? In 1984. It was 1991 before he finally won. That was 7 years, right? We're talking about
crazy.
It took a time. It took a minute, right? And you look at certain players that had to wait. LeBron, how long did it took? Almost a decade for LeBron to finally get his first chip, right?
Yep.
He comes into the league in 2003. You know, he goes 2011. You know, he's in Miami. Don't win, right? It took another year, right? So it took almost a decade for LeBron. And we're talking about the guys that people look at are the two greatest players in the history of the sport. Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't always come easy for those. Ask Connor McDavid in the hockey world right now. Right.
Boy.
I mean, we're looking at McDavid. It's going to be at least 12 years at minimum before he sees the Stanley Cup, if he gets one. So I will say this,
you said it
though.
about that.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you said it doesn't come easy, but I think that's what people are so enamored with Wemby is it does look kind of easy. Like he turned San Antonio around immediately. You know, it's almost that Tim Duncan, David Robinson effect, the plus number of wins after being drafted. But that's kind of what basketball collecting is all about. Like there is a lot of game to game. It is like the stock market. It's not always logical, but there's a lot of activity that there's no question. You know, there's a lot of interest in every game. Jalen Brunson, his stuff's been incredible, up 30% just in the last week and a half, up doubled from last year, all of his key cards. You know, performance-based is great. Having performance-based increases in collecting, I think is fair, is the right way to, you know, have your items appreciate. But that I think that's what people love. He's making it look easy.
Yeah, and I will say this for all the talk, for so many of us that sit there like, look at how freakishly athletic Wemby is for a guy that big. I just want to point out, and I was reminded of this the other day, that as wild as it is to see a 7-footer move like that, let's not forget, for martial arts purists, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, with a cameo appearance in the movie Game of Death, in a fight scene with Bruce Lee. Watch the athleticism and the agility of Kareem in that fight scene against Bruce Lee. So when we all sit there and say, whoa, look at how crazy Wemby is out there. Peak Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, early 1970s. My God, watch that, man. Watch that athleticism. That's a black belt training and sparring with Bruce freaking Lee.
Yeah.
So
and it's cool.
That's 50 years ago now, 50 plus years.
Is.
But I'm just telling you, there's video. Go find it on YouTube or just go rent the movie or watch the movie. Find it somewhere on streaming. But Kareem, Bruce Lee, Wemby, it existed a half century before Wemby was doing all this crazy stuff. So I just want to point out, like, for the unks like me out there, Fab, it did happen before. We did see some of this athleticism.
It's pretty cool, and
but his shooting Kareem is like, it's not even close compared to Kareem.
No, and I think that's why Kareem was considered the best player in the league for a long time. You know, coming out of college, it was incredible, and you know, too bad there wasn't more collecting that went on back then. In fact, basketball cards were pretty sparse in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. But you know, that fire in Wemby, I think collectors really love that too. I think that's real. And we've talked about it before in collecting. Hype is meaningful. You know, when he came into the draft, he was considered maybe the best prospect ever. And his cards immediately there was so much interest. And then when you combine hype with performance, that is untouchable. Like there's no heat like that kind of heat. And I think that's the major difference collecting wise between SGA and Wemby is SGA, he's a pretty stoic dude, composed, he's a killer. It took him a few years to get going. Definitely didn't have close to the hype of a Wemby.
No, not even close.
Not even close, right? In fact, that trade was barely a blip on the radar back then. And so hype is meaningful. It's kind of like people say, aha, we knew it. We knew he was going to be great. We knew he was going to be a great collectible. And when those things collide, that's where you get this type of stuff, what's going on with his cards.
Totally, right? And you talk about a guy like SGA. I mean, he was an 11th overall pick. You know, whereas we were talking for a year, at least a year, with Wemby being the future of the league. And
ahead of time, yeah.
And he's, you know, similar to LeBron James almost 25 years ago, exceeding the hype, right? You look at certain athletes that we've talked about, you know, in Canada. Obviously, the anticipation of Sidney Crosby. We talked about Sid probably from the time he was about 13 or at least 15 years of age, you know, playing junior hockey. And, you know, I covered him, you know, when he was 16 playing in the World Juniors. But we heard about Sidney Crosby for probably 3 years before he was eventually drafted first overall. And you look at Sid and what he's done, multiple gold medals, multiple Stanley Cups. He's continuing to climb up there in the all-time scoring race, and a player who everything that you would have expected from Sidney Crosby or thought he might be, he has exceeded it. And I think the same goes for LeBron James. And Wemby, I think, has that potential to, for all the hype about this kid,
living up to the hype.
Not only is he living up to it, I think we're on the cusp of potentially seeing exceeding already in just a small sample size of that. So that's going on. Obviously, massive numbers for Wemby, massive numbers for SGA already. Basketball is finally cooking for all those people with all those cards, all those years going, man, why isn't the basketball market? The basketball market is finally starting to catch up here, Fab.
Oh, well, yeah. Basketball had its day. Like during COVID, basketball went bananas. Like that's when it surpassed. It was always baseball. In fact, back in the day when you collected cards, it was just called baseball cards. Even if you were talking about hockey cards or basketball, it was just, the baseball card shop. That's what you called it. And it wasn't until the early 90s that people really started to care about the other sports. But basketball got nuts during COVID. And it had been the number one sport for several years. And I think it wasn't until Ohtani really got cooking that baseball's back to number one.
It's come back
last couple years. Yeah. But it's cool. I mean, to have the conversation, there's two major sports worldwide that run the hobby. That's pretty cool. And anyway,
think about, like, you know, football for a $25 billion a year industry in the NFL. That one has lagged a little bit, but it's starting to kind of.
It's different, like Topps, you know, is coming out with a bang. When they got the license back earlier this year, they came out with Topps Chrome.
Tecmo Bowl inserts.
The Tecmo Bowl inserts are amazing, and you know they did a lot of things really well. But again, that's another volatile market. It's a lot about not just prospecting, but prospecting quarterbacks. So it's in particular, that's where the money is. There's no question. But man, when you think about it, like,
and there's more misses than there are hits.
There's way more misses, right? We had a story a couple months back talking about the baseball market and the percentages of just a baseball player who was in Baseball America's top 10 prospects of a given year. So we tracked like the last 26 years of all the names that were a top 10 Baseball America preseason prospect, and I believe 9% of them made it to a Hall of Fame or Hall of Fame caliber career. And this is the top of the top of the top. And people should be reminded about that. You know, you go back through history, you look at even if it's just the first round, how many guys turn into stars, and especially collectible stars. And when you're talking about football, it's quarterbacks that matter the most in terms of interest and dollar wise. And then you have your Brock Purdy's that come out of nowhere. And So it's you got to have a strong heart to keep up with prospecting, that's for sure. And but that's part of what runs the engine of collecting is the fun of following guys, and if you have the stomach to to go with the ups and downs, then
and capital.
Have fun with it. And capital. Well, that's it. And it's not cheap. Yeah, it's not like we're buying guys for $1. Like back when Joe Thornton had his rookie cards, you could buy 10 of them for $10. No, you're paying different a lot. Time. Yeah,
very different well, time. I mean, look at the market we've seen even from a hockey standpoint with Connor Bedard and Macklin Celebrini, right out of a pack in these last few years, right? For these young guns cards, right?
Amazing.
So here we go. World Cup underway. It's happening. It is wild. The fact that it is actually happening. Games being played in Canada. Something I don't think I ever would have. I mean, it was something you could dream about as a kid, as a sports fan, but it's actually happening. Tickets are not cheap, but we are starting to see activity in the soccer market or footy, if you will, for some of our purists. Golden Auctions had a couple of big ones recently go. What can you tell us about the soccer market as we now get back on North American soil for the first time in 30 plus years that we have a World Cup since the U.S. in '94. Here we've got Mexico, the U.S. and Canada all hosting this time around. There's a buzz and the market's starting to move. Ronaldo moving the needle. Messi obviously is popular. Yeah. What can you tell us?
First of all, that Golden Auction is incredible. Like it's specifically a soccer football auction, and it's not just cards. They've got game used jerseys, game used boots for soccer shoes, and some amazing pieces. Like you can tell that they've been holding back some really big time pieces. And lot number one, so the featured item, is what's known as the Pele rookie. It's a 1958 card from Sweden. It's got like 26 letters in the name. I'm not going to try to pronounce it. It's a PSA 9, and I believe there's 13 copies graded 9. And the last one sold for, I think, 1.33 million, probably 2 or 3 years ago. Ooh. And yeah, so there's another copy that's coming up. The timing is obviously excellent. In our newsletter, we do highlight 3 or 4 key cards from that auction, and we include links there so people can follow along. I think it's still more than a week, or even a couple of weeks away. I think it's supposed to end towards the back end of the tournament. But yeah, you've got high end. You got Ronaldo jerseys, game used jerseys, game used shoes. Top cards of Erling Haaland. Norway is supposed to be a strong team in the World Cup, right? Yeah. That was always the knock on Erling Haaland and investing in him. It's like, we're never going to see him in the World Cup. Well, Norway's the reason we don't have Italy in the World Cup.
Wild.
And obviously it's incredible. And, he's an unbelievable player. Like the way he scores, he's just such a finisher and such a Viking superstar. And you've got Kylian Mbappe in France, and it's soccer's in a good place. But if you want to test your heart and volatility, the soccer market is it. Prospecting soccer players, it's wild. And soccer really hit the collecting heartbeat again during COVID, because again, people were just researching everything, and a lot of this stuff was really inexpensive. You could buy Alphonso Davies Donruss rookies for $1 each, and then a few months later sell them for 20 each. Like everything was going nuts. People were discovering soccer, and they're so heavily criticized when they don't make it. And it's remarkable. Even players that turn into stars in the soccer market, they're not enough of a star where they become collectible. And we talked about it last time, that collectors are really harsh on these athletes if they don't hit the hype that we hope. But yeah, check out that auction. I believe it's called the the global football auction. I don't think they wanted to use the term World Cup, but there's some amazing stuff on there. And like I said, we've got a few links on our newsletter. But yeah, man, soccer cards are real. And, we posted this on our socials about a week and a half ago. There was a Ronaldo card, one of one insert. The Kaboom is a very popular insert from Panini from the last few years. And this is the one of one green Panini Kaboom of Ronaldo, PSA 10. And that one sold for 1.35 million as well. That was a brokered deal by Fanatics Collect, and that is a record for any Ronaldo card. And he's pictured in a Juventus jersey. And me as a Roma fan, and whenever I see Juve, I kind of cringe a little bit. But goes to show, like, soccer is here. It's here to stay. And, this World Cup being in North America is only going to take cards to a whole new level.
Wild. Yeah. I mean, front and center, we are going to have games coming out the wazoo for the next couple of weeks, and as many as 6 games a day in some stretches. Just wild. What a time to be a soccer fan. And, while we're at work, those games will be on. Just
picture in picture.
Just streaming away. What a time. So
think of all the car flags we're going to see too, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. just the buzz is starting to get there. The buzz is starting to get in there. So, okay, we've talked about, obviously, we've talked about where we're at right now with basketball and the movement there. We've talked about, obviously, soccer, the Heineman. CFL season is underway. And so here we go. The CFL, the 2026 season, it starts earlier now, trying to wrap up. Look, and I think this has been long overdue. And I think I want to give some credit to the league and the front office, because they're trying some things. They're trying to adapt. They're trying to just be more progressive, where they are at. And I know some purists are hating the changes, but look, a game at the end of November in Saskatchewan, in Winnipeg, in Edmonton, in Calgary, quite possibly Hamilton, Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal. It is freaking cold, right? Like, you're running the risk of having occasions where it might be, there's the risk of a minus 30s type of day in the prairies, in the Midwest, in Canada's heartland. So I do think there's a lot of logic in terms of wrapping up, earlier in November, get it done, a little after Halloween. And also at the same time, like, you're not competing quite as long with the National Football League as well. So anyway, earlier, the weather's better, allows for a little more engagement. But the collectibles industry, the CFL, obviously there's more scarcity to this here, Fab. There's been stop starts with cards over the years. They haven't always been there. A lot of times when we were kids, there were oftentimes gas stations ran promotions. My dad was a police officer in Ottawa. They had cards that they would hand out sometimes with different players. So I had a collection of Ottawa Rough Rider cards from when I was a kid with certain players, and think back to those days. But give me a sense of what that market is like. And then I'm going to play show and tell a little bit here. So,
I can't wait. Yeah.
So talk to me.
The CFL market is very interesting. It's, you mentioned it off the bat. The scarcity is real, compared to so many other sports.
Although, Fab, I guess we should clarify scarcity except for the 91 Jogo set.
Yeah, I would say.
And I think you could find a box, like unopened wax packs, for like $5 at a lot of different stores.
Pretty much. Let's call it the Rocket Ishmael era. Exactly. Yeah, he definitely had an impact on production numbers. But yeah, some of those sets. So modern CFL cards, they basically start in 1952. So 52 Parkhurst, which is a brand that's still alive today with Upper Deck. That's considered the first set of CFL cards, and the key card or the key rookie in there is Sam Echeverry, who was a legend with Montreal, with the Alouettes. He was an incredible quarterback who won a Grey Cup with them as a coach. the market is fascinating, and so we talked about previously the vintage side of things. We have a nice story on the website about kind of the key vintage cards. But Upper Deck is the licensee that does CFL cards today and has been for more than a decade.
Now. Yeah.
Yeah. And they're really doing a great job. Like they're doing, the CFL patch logo one of ones, giving it the full royal treatment. And, you've mentioned it in the past. You love the connection with CFL players and wrestlers. And, there's so many of these athletes have, a whole other career after they're done playing. And a lot of them are college superstars that just couldn't make it in the NFL. And that's a big part of CFL collecting, is that U.S. college alumni. And that's really cool to see. I've always had a warm spot for the CFL myself. I love the Ottawa Rough Riders. It made me dislike everything Montreal because of that rivalry. But I remember going to football games was just these guys were like superheroes, like mythical creatures, and to think that they were the runts of the litter in college football, that had to come to the CFL because they weren't big enough, they weren't fast enough, whatever it was, yet they were, superhuman to me. But the market is very,
they were the stars. They were the stars of the league.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think with the way you look at how the game has changed, I think particularly in the National Football League, but somewhere in the last 25 years, all those quarterbacks that got largely ignored, that were deemed too small, too mobile, the way the game has changed now, all those players that eventually became stars and legends and Hall of Famers here in the CFL, those guys who were largely ignored are now first overall picks. And I think the example, like you look at, the likes of the Kyler Murrays, possibly even a Baker Mayfield, Russell Wilson, those types of players that were more mobile, that were smaller. You're sort of Doug Flutie-esque, right? Justin Fields, all these guys that have been first round picks over the last few years. And now Russ was a third rounder, but guys who actually now get a chance to play in the National Football League, and mobility matters, right? Arm strength and mobility, where before it was like, look, we just want a statue who can be 6'4", right? And the game has changed the last quarter century. And so, and unfortunately, it has had a huge impact on the Canadian Football League game, because you just, that depth of those star quarterbacks are harder and harder to find nowadays. Yeah. And also now with the advent of NIL money, look, I think that your top end CFL quarterback can make about $700,000 a year, which that's a good chunk of change. And even as a backup, you could be making about $250,000. But if you look at some NIL athletes that maybe don't get that opportunity to play in the National Football League, but you've got guys that are making seven figures in NIL deals. Right, look at the money Cam Ward was making when he was at University of Miami not that long ago, right?
Yeah, and what you're saying there, so many of those quarterbacks can say a massive thank you to Warren Moon, because he's the biggest example of them all. And so with the season starting, we actually updated our story on the website, and we added some media about some of these players. So people maybe that aren't familiar with a lot of these CFL stars, we found either clips from the CFL Hall of Fame or from TSN, just to give a little bit of a bio on these guys. And, of course, Warren Moon, I mean, part of 5 championships with Edmonton before going to the NFL. And the amazing thing about him, I don't know if everyone realizes, so in 1984, he went to the Houston Oilers. He was considered a rookie, and he was the highest paid player in the league at the time. So he had a massive target on his back. And, he performed incredibly well. And if people don't know Warren Moon, like, to watch him throw a football is really something special. Like, the fact that he wasn't given a chance out of college is kind of criminal. And, he's he really thanks Canada and the city of Edmonton and the starting quarterback at the time. I think Tom Wilkinson was the starting quarterback with Edmonton.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't see Warren Moon as a threat. He welcomed him. He taught him about the CFL game. He taught him about Edmonton. And, you said it in our very first podcast, the stories behind CFL players, it's awesome. And I think it's half of what makes CFL card collecting so special is so many of these guys went on to do special things after football, or just the level of how they played in the CFL. And it's a really interesting market. It's a lot of fun. Lots of cool rookie cards. And I got to say, I'm really looking forward to your little show and tell here.
Okay, we'll have some fun. And it's funny, it comes back to wrestling a little bit, but you look at some of those players that did, and you see it in the NFL too, like certain guys who played and didn't get a card.
Right.
Yes. Dwayne Johnson, The Rock, never played. He got cut in camp, so there's never a Dwayne Johnson rookie, or Joseph Anawahi, who we all know now worldwide as Roman Reigns. 2 seasons in Edmonton. Never got
no card.
Never got that card, right?
Too bad.
And there's a lot, and you know what? There's a lot of those guys. Lex, if you go through the wrestling history, but like Lex Luger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Played in Montreal, out of Penn State and Miami, and
cool.
Never got a card. Gene Kiniski, going back to the 1950s, never got a card. For those types of those certain players. So anyway, you kind of and so the CFL release somewhere over the last number of years. They released cards like kind of introducing players who did play that were kind of notable personalities.
Mm-hmm.
Rohan Marley, great example. Rohan Marley, who had like a half a cup, like more of like an espresso cup of coffee in Ottawa
with Rough
Riders in the mid 90s, but the son of
and
Bob Marley.
He was Bob. Okay. Son of Bob Marley.
Yeah.
Got it.
The Rasta of Disaster, who played at the University of Miami. So, okay. I'm going to pull some of these cards out. I'll share with you some of the stories and why they, they're kind of near and dear to my heart. So here is a Red Rooster, Warren Moon. Wow. So there's a couple of rookies of Warren Moon. And so, obviously there is the Jogo black and white of Warren Moon, but this is
oversized. Yep.
This is from out of Edmonton, out of the Red Rooster restaurants.
Is that from 81? Is that from 1981?
That is from, I want to say, is that 81?
Or 83?
It might actually be 82, possibly. But,
82. So that would be his second issued card.
Mm-hmm. But I think it kind of aligns the same time. Yeah. So
yeah. Awesome.
So there's that. You talked about the early 1950s, the 1953. I'll see you one earlier in I believe this is 1952 or 1951. But this is Bernie Custis, who was a quarterback with the Hamilton Ticats, largely recognized as the first starting black quarterback in professional football. So you talk about the opportunities that the CFL really created, opportunities for people who couldn't get them. Obviously Warren Moon, Doug Flutie getting opportunity, and this, but we're talking 1950s. It was a different time in America, and here was an opportunity for a guy like Bernie Custis to play in Hamilton. Bernie passed away in his late 80s, just about the last 10 years. But there you go. As the historian in me. These are the things I often get a kick out of and things like that.
Great.
He was in Tecmo Bowl. He was a star in Tecmo Bowl. He was an unbelievable receiver in both in the National Football League and in the CFL. Swerve and Mervyn Fernandez.
Wow,
so if you remember Swerve and Mervyn, look at that. And so
that's a great card. What year is that from?
That is 1984, I want to say.
84.
Or maybe 85. Do I have the date on there? I want to say 1985. Sorry, check 85. That. 1985. Swerve and Mervyn Fernandez.
Beautiful.
From that's Mohawk gas stations there. So again, there's the gas station. What I don't have, and I think you've talked about it, and you can find the article on GRADEx Media on the website, talking about some of the key cards. But Carl Weathers. Right. There's a Chevron Carl Weathers card from 1972 and
71. Yeah.
Or 1971. It is rare AF.
Well, it was a mail-in. It was a mail-in bonus card. I don't know if you had to mail in all the other cards or some kind of proof of purchase, but yeah, he wasn't part of the original set. That's what makes it so much more rare.
Scarcity to it.
Yeah, pretty cool.
So yes, and you can find there's some Royal Bank ones, some oversized kind of posters that you see people, but the Chevron 1971 is probably the unicorn for CFL collectors. And
definitely.
And obviously the popularity and the fame that Carl Weathers went on to, obviously with Rocky, Mandalorian,
Chubbs.
Happy Gilmore. I mean, Predator. Carl had a great run. Okay, so nerdy parts. One of my first favorite athletes of all time as a kid, quarterback of the Ottawa Rough Riders. There's J.C. Watts. This was Upper Deck did a run of Oklahoma Sooners alumni. And so this is assigned J.C. Watts. J.C. Watts, after his playing days, became an American senator. So kind of a fascinating individual there with J.C. Watts, former Oklahoma quarterback, and then also took Ottawa to a Grey Cup one year. This is a USFL rookie card, but obviously a lot of people look at the greatest player in CFL history. There's Doug Flutie with the New York Generals.
I love that.
With Doug.
Yeah. And still a popular card today.
Still a very popular. I think so. This is more recent, but a recent Hall of Famer. Chad Owens, multiple Grey Cup winner, MOP. But there's Chad Owens. Had some fun with that. And then another classic card, and a guy who long before Rocket Ismail, about 15 years before the Rocket, or 20 years before the Rocket, there was Joe Theismann.
Look at that.
With 1972, I want to say, or 1971.
That one's 71, I believe.
71, yeah. Okay.
So in doing the research, look at that, adding some of the media elements to the story, I found a nice clip from NFL Films, A Football Life. And Joe Theismann, or Theismann. So that
Joey Theismann, Well,
that's real.
Funny. I interviewed Joey. He talked about Joey Theismann.
Yeah, and the PR guy from Notre Dame said, "So how do you pronounce your name?" And they literally changed the pronunciations because Theismann for the Heisman, and it's a real story. I thought it was kind of a myth that just sounded good.
It's Joey Theismann from New Jersey.
Yeah. And he so he was drafted by the Miami Dolphins in 1971, and he was supposed to be the backup for the Dolphins. And so he goes through what happened with the contract negotiations and think about what history he could be part of if he had stayed with the Dolphins. He would have been on that undefeated 72 team. Could you imagine that? And during the season, Bob Greasy got hurt. So the backup came, and I think he played 8 or 9 games. So Theismann would have had to have an impact and actually played in the Super Bowl. Think about it, right? But instead, he was with the Argonauts. And so we found a really fun clip. It's about 5 or 6 minutes, and we added it to the story, to our vintage CFL card story. And again, that's part of what makes CFL collecting so much fun. Is this is where you really appreciate the athletes for what they go through and what they do in life before and after football. Really, really good stuff.
This was a guy. He was well before my time, but there was the legendary sleeper play. Again, this is my Ottawa bias showing, but Bobby Simpson. Who was a receiver. Wow. And look at that! What a gorgeous card this is.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Like an artistry. But Bobby Simpson, I remember seeing.
I don't remember the red uniforms though. That looks great.
This is late 1950s here. But Bobby Simpson, receiver in Ottawa. I remember seeing him at a wedding when I was a kid, and really thinking, I thought he was a receiver. This guy, obviously much older and a little heavier. I was like, hey, a little big for a receiver. He looked like an offensive lineman. Anyway, but Bobby Simpson was a legendary name. Here's another one from our childhood, Fab. What a player, though. Electric, the Gizmo, Henry Gizmo Williams.
Whoa.
USFL again.
I did not know he had a USFL
Showboats.
That's awesome.
So that's 1984 with Gizmo Williams, who went on to have a tremendous career in Edmonton. My first ever sports jersey was, I think it was a bootleg, but it was number 77 and Tony Gabriel here with Hamilton.
Yeah.
But
look at that.
Mr. Ottawa Rough Rider, one of the greatest players in Canadian football history.
Yeah.
But Tony Gabriel, man, love that guy.
That's his rookie.
Cool mustache.
Yeah.
And I remember just being in absolute awe, having a chance to interview him years later for the first time.
Awesome.
And just thought that was so cool. Here's another one, another name from the past, former BC Lions quarterback, but Joe Cap.
Oh, yeah.
We may remember him more recently for throwing a solid punch to the face of Angelo Mosca. But there's Joe Cap. Like, just some of these cards, though, and the way the air, like, just almost like it's just, they're like art. Some of these
well
cards,
designed, right? Yeah.
They're beautiful. So that's early 1960. I want to say 1962, and then going to the 1958 series. It's a poor Friday cut, but it's Jackie Parker.
The best player in the league for 8 years, who did everything. I noticed there they have him as a tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. But he played like 4 different positions, didn't he?
He's a halfback here. I mean, he was different time. The sport was you were multi-purpose in those days. So and then here's Angelo King Kong Mosca. Again, there's the wrestling fandom, but a guy who was a personality. One. Again, in that classic 1950s set.
That's his rookie also.
Yeah, it's his rookie. It's this one is graded a 6.5 from KSA, so the Canadian grader here. Yes, but there's Angelo King Kong Mosca. I remember meeting him in a hotel lobby when I was about 17 and getting an autograph on like just a napkin, right? Because you did that when you were a kid, right? You get a napkin, all right, just sign it, right? And so there was Mosca. And then last but not least, one of my dad's high school teachers at Rideau High in Ottawa, but also regarded as one of the great quarterbacks from at least as a Canadian in the history, and one of the greatest players in Canadian football history, and that is Russ Jackson. Wow. And there's his rookie card from graded a 7 with KSA, excellent. And that's 1958. So a card that was kept in beautiful condition that I was able to scoop up a few years ago.
Did you buy it graded?
No, I didn't.
Really?
It was kept in great condition. Somebody was selling it actually on Facebook Marketplace, and so I was able to find that a number of years ago now. And so there's a look at some of my CFL fandom over the years. And then I also got the Brian Pillman as another one of those CFL Grail cards.
Yes.
Brian Pillman, pro wrestler who played briefly in the CFL in the mid 1980s with Calgary. Mm-hmm. Before getting his training with the Hart family, but Brian Pillman, actually that card actually has been sent to through our friends at COMC.
Oh, that's great.
And that is in the process of being graded at PSA. Nice. So we'll see. I think it's in decent shape. It might I don't think it's a 10, but I think I'm optimistic.
There are no 10s. If it's a 10, it's the first one. Yeah. I think there's a handful of 9s. It's a black bordered card. It's so hard to get in nice shape. So good luck with that one. That's great. And I noticed the last 2 cards being KSA graded.
Yeah.
You were asking about the CFL market, and that is one of the graders. So to tell you a little bit about KSA, they're actually the second oldest grader in North America. So PSA started grading in 1991, but KSA started in 1996. And they started in the Guelph, Cambridge area. And so they've kind of built up a niche in definitely in hockey, vintage hockey. And CFL is another one. That's where you see a lot of the bigger CFL cards are KSA graded. And a lot of that has to do with, I would say the age group of a lot of CFL collectors is a little bit older. And like we talked about at the one of our last episodes, is that there's still a bit of a apprehension in sending cards across the border. And KSA gives people a really good option to have their stuff graded within Canada. And, they have a strong legacy, again, being around, Yeah, this is many years now. Is that 30 years they've been at this? Wow. They do have a strength in vintage hockey, especially hockey in general, but definitely vintage hockey and CFL, vintage CFL stuff. I mean, they grade everything, of course, but they're not quite at the same level as some of the big American graders. But for a lot of collectors, it's a really good option because, as we talked about, the first thing with grading is authentication, right? Has this thing, is it real? Is it authentic? Has it been trimmed? You want to know that your stuff is genuine and hasn't been doctored or messed with. And the pricing with KSA is more reasonable than some of the other big graders, which is also attractive. The turnaround times are strong as well. You won't get quite the same resale value with KSA. I mean, you'll see some monstrous cards in KSA holders, but typically they say the range of what they sell for is anywhere from 1 to 2 grades below what a PSA, let's say, would sell for. Okay. So still a very strong option. It definitely much better than keeping key cards raw. But again, dealing with everything with the border, tariffs and all that, KSA is even a better option for a lot of collectors. But the one thing to keep in mind is the final grade. A KSA 10 won't sell for the same as a PSA 10. It's a level below. And like I said, in that 1 to 2 grade difference. But still, it's they do a lot of business. They have, I believe is it 2 locations or 3 locations across Canada? One in the East Coast, one on the West Coast.
The company is fragmented, right? Where you kind of have, there's KSA in Ontario, and then which kind of is in sort of the Golden Horseshoe area, I believe, in Kitchener-Waterloo, if I'm not mistaken.
It's a small town in that area. Yep.
Yeah, and then you have taken over the West. Peter Nickel had run the West, and I connected with Peter going back during COVID and first met him, and actually did a story on the whole process of grading. And I posted a video on my social media going back a few years ago about the process of what that looks like in terms of grading. And so it is interesting. So it does give you an alternative. Obviously, they seem to have a pretty good reputation with vintage cards, but you're not. But the resale. And our friends at Slab Sharks recently posted something about some big sales with KSA products here, where we saw well into the 5 figures, like deep into the 5 figures for some. But it also kind of a telling sign of just where, I don't want to say the lack of respect, but in terms of the perception as a whole in the
recognition.
Industry.
Exactly. It's kind of like with any walks of life, whether it's electronics, fashion, people are going to go to particular brands because, and obviously there's other factors as well. I don't think KSA has had an up-to-date population report, so it's hard to know a lot of what has been graded. And speaking with the owner a few years back, he said they have a lot of that data, but I don't think it's ready to be public yet, but I think they're working on it. The construction of the holder is probably not quite at the same level as kind of the big 4 or 5 graders. But again, they're doing a lot of good things, and it's definitely a good option for people, as long as the expectations are genuine or managed, just in terms of that resale value. But again, we're sadly, all collections end up going up for sale. When we check out of life, those cards have to be moved on by typically people that don't know much about cards, and it is a good idea to have your key stuff graded so your spouse or family members have a better idea of what they can expect to get out of their cards. And I think it's something we should talk about down the road is
a good reminder about Collectibles a good reminder about on the website at gradexmedia.com.
Yeah, and we touch on that briefly in Collectibles U, is that whole idea of how to protect your collection. And part of it is, for insurance purposes, for, like I said, in case you have to sell your products or your family sell your cards, or it's something to think about. We don't like thinking about, wills and the end of life, but it's important to make life easier for our loved ones, especially if collecting is something that's really important to you, and your loved ones want to at least honor you in one way or another. So anyway, that's a good chat about KSA, and I believe their URL is ksagrading.ca if people want to check them out, and they've recently.
But let's talk about, just further to that, the example that we saw with Wayne Gretzky. And obviously 5 years ago, the market was set for a Wayne Gretzky tippy top PSA 10. But we recently saw the sale of a Wayne Gretzky PSA 10 a KSA 10 O-Pee-Chee card, and give us a sense of what that market looked like from one to the other.
Yeah, and that's probably the wildest example you can think of. So back in 2021, one of the two only PSA 10 O-Pee-Chee rookies sold for $3.75 million US. And today, I don't know if it would get quite that high. We're talking about the peak of COVID, but you're probably in the $3 million range no matter what. But a KSA 10 was recently sold on Slab Sharks, and I believe it went for it was either $37,000, and that value equates roughly to what would be like a PSA 8.5. PSA 8s are typically in that $25,000 Canadian range. So an 8.5, you bump it up a bit more from there. So that gives you an idea of that range, basically a grade and a half difference. And it's a big deal. When you go from a 9 to a 10, the multiplier typically starts at 3 times. So a single grade can mean a lot. But if you're talking about, a mid-range card, mid to upper lower range card, a 1 or 2 grade difference won't have as massive an impact. This is an extreme example because we're dealing with one of the most scarce PSA 10s. Like, there's tens of thousands of copies of that Gretzky rookie that have been graded just by PSA, and they have 2 10s. So it's kind of an extreme example, but it kind of still sits in that 1 to 2 grade level difference, which I think is fair.
I think that does speak about brand. I think brand recognition is the biggest thing there.
That's the biggest thing, yeah. And you look at the card, it doesn't seem to fit the same criteria as the PSA 10, and that's the other thing too, right? Collectors should examine the actual wording of the grading scale, because that does make a difference. And we have a story on the website specifically about that. In fact, it's one of our most viewed stories. It has almost no images, and it's all kind of text right from each of the grading companies. This is their word for word definition of gem mint. This is PSAs, this is Beckett, so on and so on. And then we try to summarize, what is a gem mint card, mint, and so on. So that's the other thing too. What is the wording of the KSA language for their grading criteria? And so again, it's good for people to do their homework before they decide, what they want to spend their grading dollars on.
So there you go. Just to give you a sense of where things are at. Never a bad thing to have your card validated, have it authenticated. We'll see how things all play out here. But on that note, we're going to bring this episode to an end. The World Cup is happening, NBA Finals. We got what a fun time to be a sports fan. Weather's finally, summer's here, just around the corner. We'll be back in 2 weeks' time with another episode. Again, just a quick reminder, everybody. Free newsletter goes right to your inbox twice a month. Go to gradexmedia.com. So if you miss us in between with the podcast, hey, the following week, you're getting a free newsletter sent. All you got to do is sign up, put your name, put your email, and it goes to your inbox every 2 weeks as well. So we got you covered. Don't forget to follow along on social media, subscribe to our YouTube page. That right there is the professor, the CEO, Fab Del Rio. I'm James Cybulski. We'll talk to you next time right here on the GRADEx Show on Earth. See ya.